Okay, in our next interview with an archer, we're very happy to have Danyar Baidaralin from Kazakhstan. Danyar recently got in touch with me on through the YouTube channel, so I was very happy that at least it's reaching someone up there. And Danyar is a very interesting personality. I was speaking to him, and I think in terms of the interviews that we've never had anyone from that part of the world as yet. Kazakhstan, definitely somewhere of much history, civilization, and for many Westerners, actually quite a mystery. There's a few things we do know, and more things we don't know about that part of the world. So Danyar has done a very well-researched book on bow making and horse riding and archery from that part of the world as well. So we're going to maybe discuss that a little bit. But yes, Danyar, thank you very much for connecting with myself and giving me some of your time. How are things with you?
Hi, can I speak now?
Please, yes.
Oh, okay. Hi, Jihad, and thank you very much for having me. It's a big pleasure for me and a big honor. I just came across your channel recently, and I immediately became a big fan. I'm learning so much from it. It's an amazing resource for our international archers community because we didn't have that before, at least to my knowledge. And this is like a new well of knowledge and this energy that we can all share based on our common fascination and love to archery. And I also want to, right from the start, I want to add my 2 cents. Uh, I made in December, I prepared a gift for my fellow archers in a form of calendar devoted to Kazakh archers. Because ever since the COVID started and uh, hello? Yeah,
Yeah.
ever since the COVID started and we couldn't do our archery anymore, we had to spend more time at home. So I started painting archers because I cannot shoot a lot right now or build my bow equipment or my bows. So I started painting archers. And this is the calendar. It's for this year. It's in 2 languages. It's in Kazakh
Mm-hmm.
using Latin alphabet and also in English. So you can always see, what month it is, what day
Yeah.
it is. And we agreed with you that under this video, we will post a downloadable link. And this is my gift. I want everybody to download it for free. And it's formatted for European A4 size paper or US letter size paper. So you can
Mm-hmm.
print it in any local shop that makes calendars. You just have to explain them that this is a flip over wall calendar. It needs a
Mm-hmm.
binder and a hook, and they should be able to do it for you. And then you just put it on your wall and then you flip it every 2 months. And this way you'll have a calendar with love from Kazakhstan, from a fellow archer, with
Mm.
these images of Kazakh archers that I produced.
Excellent. It's on
And
behalf of everyone. I would
yep,
I would like to thank you for that. The artwork is really fantastic. You have a very great gift in your drawing,
thank you,
and the images, they really
thank
look
you.
as if they are based on real, Kazakhstan people. That even that I'm looking at the bows and the way
Yep,
the strings are tied, the horses, the saddles, the feathers on the arrows. Everything is actually historically correct. So this is also a very important aspect. Sometimes we look at miniatures or people drawing paintings of what they think things were in history, and a lot of it is just the imagination. But I can see that you've definitely done a lot of research and made sure that things are correct. So thank you for this. I will certainly put the link in the description below for people to download for that. So thank you very much. Danyar, tell us a little bit about yourself. Um,
oh,
what you do. Obviously, you are an artist, an archer, rider, etc. So tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into archery as well.
Sure. Well, I do a few things in parallel, but they're all kind of related to archery and horseback archery, particularly. For example, I wrote a few books, and they're all about this nomadic culture from the region where I live, from Kazakhstan, Central Asia, Eurasian plains, Mongolia, southern Russia, and etc. And I wrote a few books on that. This was my first book, Sadaqshılık. It was my first one, and then a few more followed. Also, I'm an artist, like you said, and all of my art is also related to archery or warriors culture, nomadic culture. I'm an historical reconstructor, so pretty much everything I paint, I can build. And to build it, I have to know exactly how it was made, and therefore I have to pay a lot of attention to details and how it all kind of, because if I can't build it, then I cannot paint it. And this is why they get so historically accurate. This is my aim. This is intentional. I'm trying to be as historically accurate as possible. Of course, we can never reach 100%, because when we get archaeological data, it's just, a piece of mud with pieces in it, and then we make an educated guess how it all comes together. And also, I'm a little bit involved in historical reenactment. In other words, this is how I am a horseback archer. I'm not a competition horseback archer. I have only done it a couple of times, and I'm not trained to do tracks and etc. But I have a decent amount of hours on a horseback and with a bow, because we did it as part of the show. We had a program where we talk about history of horseback archery and warriorship in Kazakhstan, and we demonstrate all these technique live. And I was part of this horseback archers team, and we were demonstrating some of the war combat archery techniques. So this is kind of related information to horseback archery. And now you also asked me how I've gotten into this.
Yeah.
This is the book that I wrote. It all started in my childhood. I started building bows like many boys probably around the world, just from the branches and with a rope.
Yeah.
And that's how we started shooting it. Just a childhood play thing.
Yeah.
Those bows, they were not good. They didn't last because the wood, the branches were still fresh.
Yeah.
So they didn't last longer. And then when I became an adult, there was a big break between this childhood hobby. But then when I became an adult, I spent a few years working in the United States, where I actually learned my English. And over there,
your English is very good, by the way, and it's much better than my Kazakhstan language. So I'm very happy that you can speak good English.
Yours is great. I like the British accent. I really I enjoy it. Anyways, so I started taking these classes at the local archery club where I lived at that time, and there was the club's name was Tenji's Archery Lanes, and the owner himself, James Dean, gave me the very first lesson how to shoot a proper, Olympic adult bow, and he taught me to shoot fingers. I started with fingers, and there was a little dedicated, diehard group of traditional archers there. Older guys, all Americans, and they shot American flat bow. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yes.
It's kind of like a long bow. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Beautiful bow. Beautiful bow. But I immediately, because I knew that I represent this horseback archery tradition. So
Sure.
my first bow that I bought for myself was a horseback bow, you know, the hunt style
Yes.
with the distinctive shape and etc. And I started shooting it, but I was still shooting fingers, and the
Mm.
arrow was on the
Inside.
on the left side.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I've got into some consistent results. I wasn't good at archery. All these other guys, they were way better than me.
Mm.
But at least I was consistent. I could, you know, the grouping was like this from 18 yards, from 20 meters, 20 yards or 18 meters. And then I started learning more about it, and I realized that if I have a horse bow, I have to shoot it with a thumb ring. And so
Mm.
I started experimenting with switching to thumb ring, but my first results were very disappointing because I was still aiming just the way I was with fingers, but now because the arrow is now on the outside, and because the archer's paradox works this way, I was now missing target by 2 or 3 feet to the right, and it was just, it, you know, going from a group like
Everything
this
was
to
going
not
wrong.
even hitting. Everything was going wrong. I was so frustrated. So I contacted Thomas Duvernay. I found his email. I wrote him, and you, of course, you had him, right? I haven't watched that interview yet, but I've seen it in the
Yeah, very
list.
nice guy. Very,
So
very knowledgeable on Chinese history.
yeah,
You know, excellent person.
he introduced Korean archery to all of us, to the world. And so he gave me an advice. He said, just twist your bow hand a little bit, you know. And I followed this advice, and now I finally started getting the right results. And that's when I realized that, you know, your entire body is involved in this process. You can't just let, you know, your bow hand be idle and, you know, rely just because thumb ring archery is more complex, of course, as you know, than
Of course.
fingers.
Right.
So I had to retrain myself and work with both hands now, and you have to anchor it properly, and you have to make sure so that everything is aligned. So it's a much finer art than just a self-bow, longbow archery. And this is how I've gotten into it more seriously. And then, of course, because I'm a kind of curious guy, I started looking into my heritage because I knew at that point already that my ancestors, the Kazakhs, were part of this original horseback archery tradition, you know, of Eurasian nomads. And so I started looking for information, but there wasn't many. There was actually very little. A lot of information about Mongol archery, some information on Chinese archery, a lot of information on Turkish archery, obviously Korean archery, but not much about Kazakh archery, particularly, even in Kazakhstan. Uh, in most of the books, it's like one paragraph, a few lines, or maybe one chapter at the most, and that's it. And the information is not very technical, very reliable. It's just general overview kind of information. So at that point, I realized since I gathered so much information now, and I'm also practicing it, why not write a book? It was kind of a natural decision for me, and
Yeah.
that's why I started writing it. And I actually I wrote it pretty much in 2007 and 8, but then the recession started, and
Mm.
we went into all this economical hardship. I lost my job, and we ended up going back to Kazakhstan.
Mm.
A decision that I never regretted. It was like it was like it happened on purpose because when I
Right.
came back to Kazakhstan, I found out that there are quite a few other people who are also into archery, and we independently came to this each on his own, and then
Right.
we finally met, and
Amazing.
everybody brought something. Yeah, and everybody brought something to the table. one guy was amazing bow maker, another guy was
Wow.
good shooter, other guy could ride a horse, other guy who could do something else, and I wrote a
Excellent.
book. So we
Excellent.
still hang out together. Yeah, and now it's finally growing and it's finally taking place. And I'm still riding this wave, and you know it's great. I enjoy it a lot. Every day I learn something new. Now we have your channel. I anticipate watching all these hours of videos. So you know this is great.
Excellent, excellent. That's amazing, amazing introduction. Just a couple of questions from that. The book, if I get the name correct, Sadaqshulaq, yes?
Yeah, it's
That,
pretty close.
what's
Sadaqshulaq,
the
yeah.
what's the meaning of that? What does it mean?
Well, yeah. See, I actually wanted to save it for the last because it's kind of uh, it's kind of a complicated linguistical question. But basically, to put it simply, sadak means bow in Kazakh language, and
Right.
in other Turkic languages, it means bow kit. In other words, everything that's hanging on the belt, including quiver and bow holster, that is called sadak. But in Kazakh language, for some reason, sadak means the bow itself.
Right.
And so the way Kazakh language works, if sadak is bow, then archer will be sadak sh.
Right.
Okay. Now, if we're talking about archery, then we also add this luk, and that's how we arrive at sadak sh luk. It's very similar to Turkish. In Turkish, same thing. Ok means arrow, okçu means archer, and okçuluk means archery.
I see.
Same because we practically, Turkish and Kazakh is practically the same language, dialects of the same language, and therefore only the root of the word is different. They use the word arrow for archer, and we use word bow for archer. These are the only differences. That's why sadakshuluk means archery in Kazakh language.
Okay, interesting, interesting. You know, Kazakhstan and that part of the world, it fascinates me. I think it's a big melting pot. It's a mixture of cultures, religions, ethnicities, civilizations. There's so much history there. We cannot say, and this is obviously no disrespect, but the Kazakhstanis, they're not like, or maybe you can correct me, maybe they're not like a pure breed. Like, for example, if you look at maybe some Arabs, for example, you know, some of the Arabs, they can trace their lineage back. They are not mixed with another civilization or a culture. And that's by no means a bad thing. You know, that's always a good thing when you're mixed with so many people. You know, that part of the world, so many civilizations passed through there. It was in the hands of so many rulers at one time or another. And of course, with that, with time, there is a mixture of multi-ethnic people, different cultures, foods, tastes, clothing, etc., influences, art, things like that. When you know, you mentioned that linguistically, Kazakhstan and Turkish, you said they're the same. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, I personally consider them dialects of
Dialects, right? Okay. However, if you went to Turkey, could you speak your language there? They would understand you or not?
Well, I actually know a little bit of Turkish, so I would probably just try to speak my broken Turkish.
Right.
They're dialects, but they got separated many centuries ago, and even then, they belonged to two different groups. Turkic languages belong to Oghuz group of languages, and Kazakh belongs to Kipchak group of languages. But still, after very little time, I will be able to understand them, and they will be able to understand me. In other words, it's
Right.
not like it took me years to learn English. I think
Mm,
we're talking weeks or months before I can become fluent in Turkish, or
interesting.
maybe they can learn Kazakh. So it's really,
Mm,
really
mm.
close.
Now you mentioned there a key word there which alerted me, which was Kipchak, and Kipchak is, you know, they were a type of people who were excellent riders and archers as well. Uh, is
Yep.
this are these the origins of the Kazakhstan people?
Yeah, it is one of the origins. It's one of the biggest parts probably. But like you said earlier, and you were right on the spot. We have so many cultures mixed. We have so many types, ethnic types, anthropological types, because it used to be on the crossroads, and always a new wave of conquerors came, and also we mixed with our neighbors heavily. Back then there wasn't, I always joke that there wasn't passports or borders, so we could
Right.
always uh, interchange. And also one of the distinctive features of our culture, that we were always very religiously tolerant. So in other words, we didn't have that barrier uh, interacting with other cultures. We could accept any faith, any religion, and it still remains very much the same. And therefore, uh, we were even more open to other cultures' influences. So if you come to Kazakhstan, you will see all range from very much Mongoloid type people, very much Asian, to almost European with light hair,
Mm, mm,
blue eyes, red
mm.
skin. So
Wow.
all kind of. And some of the tribes, they have Mongol origin. Some of the tribes have Persian origin.
Right.
Some have influx of European blood. So yeah, it's a very
Mm.
ethnically diverse, but at the same time, we all Kazakhs. We understand that.
Yes. Right. Because to the ignorant mind, like myself from the West, for example, when we think of Kazakhstan, we just immediately think, oh, Mongolia or Mongols. But even the Mongols themselves were a mixed race of people because they traveled through so many lands. They
Right.
controlled so many different peoples and civilizations that they absorbed those cultures and those people, and they mixed with them. But like you say, they still were considered Mongol. But a Mongol could have been someone who looks very Chinese and someone who looks very light skinned as well. So it's a
Right.
fascinating civilization and part of history. Another question. I know we want to start on the book, so I just want to get a couple of questions out the way. Um,
Sure, sure.
with many, if we look at, for example, the Turkish history in the last 100 years, they've gone through a very big change. They had connections with their cultural past. This was severed with the modernization of Turkey, etc. Something similar happened also in Kazakhstan. Can you just maybe mention briefly about um, what turn of events happened there? And also, my question is: are the current youth in Kazakhstan, how connected are they with their past, with their cultural heritage? Um, is it totally severed, or do some of them still, for example, are they very familiar with riding horses? Do some of them know archery? Do some of them know how to use the sword? Things like that.
Okay, well, this is a very big question, worthy
Yeah,
of
I know.
another
Sorry.
book, but I will try no, 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 it's a very good one. I will try to answer it briefly, but to a point. So basically, like you said, we went through a few stages of kind of transformation. First, we were joined, we became part of Russian Empire, and we're talking about Tsars. and they introduced their own system, and they started eroding the local, the native system, political system a lot, and language and culture and etc. And then came the Soviet Union, and we became part of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union kind of inherited our territories from Russian Empire, and that process intensified like 100%. For example, one of the most tragical events in our recent history is that in the 1930s, we were forced to go from nomadic to settled forcibly. In other words, they would just come and take our livestock, and they said, okay, from now on you're settled, but they didn't provide any infrastructure or training or knowledge. And so that led to huge starvation and hunger. And based on the source, up to 50% or even more of population just died of starvation in the 1930s. So that's a huge scar on our history, and it's very recent. For example, my father said that his mother, my grandmother, saw as a child, she saw huge plains covered with human bodies.
Wow.
So and with them, with that tragic event, not only we lost half of our population, we also lost a huge part of our heritage, of our traditions, and etc. It wasn't. We were so busy surviving at that point. It wasn't. There wasn't time and power left to save something else. So we lost most of it, including our archery traditions. And to my knowledge, and I never heard otherwise, there is no lineage of archery surviving from that time, even though archers still existed in the 20th century. That is a fact, but they never passed their knowledge onto younger generation, because at that point archery was prohibited. Everybody were just afraid to touch it. But fortunately, now that we're independent, starting from 1991, Kazakhstan became an independent country, and it all started reviving. It's a little bit slower than I would personally want to see it, but it's still a process. And your question, a lot of youth these days are turning to these traditions, and archery actually is one of the doors, one of the relate to archery first, and then to the cultural heritage behind it. Then if you just start with cultural heritage, because it sounds like academian and it's a past, why study it? But when you start shooting, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's interesting, it's sports, and then you start learning what is it about, and that's how they a lot of them get introduced to our heritage. So that's kind of in a in a in a very short
In a
version
nutshell.
answering your question. Yeah, in
Yeah,
a nutshell.
excellent. Yeah. No, thank you for that. I know it was. I sometimes ask a small question which requires a big
That's
explanation,
good.
but I
That's
find
good.
it. I find the history of that part of the world so interesting, and we want to make sure that we have people like yourself. We're interviewing the correct people who have done their research and they know about their history as well.
Thank you.
Okay, let's jump into the book. Why don't you? I'm going to share the screen of your book so people can see that. And again,
Sure.
I will have a link below in the description for the calendar and the book as well. I will open up on the contents page, and you can just tell us where you want to go.
Sure.
Okay, Sadaqshuluk. Right.
Okay. Yes, Sadaqshuluk, the art of making and shooting the Kazakh horsebow. So if you go to table of content, I think I'm going to start with prehistory, and if we have time, maybe talk about types of Kazakh horsebows. So let's start
Okay.
there.
So
So
This one, this
You can
page.
scroll to page 2. Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
So the archery in Kazakhstan started in the Bronze Age, actually, and this is not part of the book. It's part of the future books, maybe.
Right.
So in the book, I start with the early Iron Age, and this is the period we call Saka, and it's known as Scythians in the West. But this is the same exact culture, Saka and Scythians. We refer to
Right.
them as Saka.
Right.
Yeah, and they use the same exact bow. If you can, you probably recognize it from this image.
Absolutely, yes.
It's
Scythian
this
bow, yes. Yeah.
slight, yeah, yes, very much curved and slightly asymmetrical with a pistol grip handle. And if you can flip, can you flip? Yeah, and these are the archers. This is how the archers of that period, yeah, this is what they looked like. The one on the top is Western Scythian, and the one on the bottom is Eastern Saka, his cousin or brother.
I see. Right.
Yeah, if you can
Very
see at
nice.
that time, they were riding without stirrups.
Yeah.
The saddle was soft. Yep.
I could see that.
So
I like the way you've depicted that in the picture, that their riding position and the fact there's no saddle. Yeah.
yeah, I studied a lot of images from that time surviving. Also, I write Scythian style, Saka style, because I have back problems and I cannot sit on a hard saddle, so I can only ride Scythian style saddle, and
Right.
without stirrups too. So this is kind of a native position for me, native
Interesting.
style.
Okay.
Yeah. And if we skip forward, so this is the next type of the bow. It was an optimization of the Saka bow, because Saka bow, if you try to build it, it's very complicated. It's much more complicated than, say, Turkish or Korean bow, and it performed really well, but probably it was too expensive, too hard to make. So the next wave of the nomads, and we usually refer to them as Huns
Yes.
or Sunnu. Uh, so they tried to make optimization of this type of bow, and they simplified the design. It became larger, and it got its iconic shape. You
Yeah.
can see the size non-contact. It's no
Yes.
longer as curvy. Yeah, it's
Right.
much larger, heavier
Yes.
bow, and later it would get.
Is this sorry to interrupt, Danyar? Is this kind of an evolution of the Scythian? So this is coming later or kind of at the same time?
Later.
Later. Okay. So this is the bow is now developing.
Yeah. Yes, it is developing, but it's developing through simplification. In other words, it became simpler but easier to reproduce.
Yeah.
So now more people could afford it and more people could shoot it. Yeah. And over there you can see the image of Turco-Mongol rider with this kind of next generation of bow in his hands.
Yeah. Right.
Yep.
And now he also has a different armor on as well. I can see, with a helmet and things.
Yeah. He's using lamellar armor, and he already has stirrups, if you noticed, because this is when the stirrups appeared historically, and we're talking about early centuries AD. Early centuries
Yes,
AD.
this was actually a question in one of the previous interviews. I can't remember now, but I was asking someone when did stirrups actually appear in history, and I think someone was saying that it was this period where before that they were obviously riding bareback. They didn't really have anything on their feet, but around this time is when they introduced stirrups. So that's quite interesting.
Yep. Sounds about
Okay.
right.
Yeah. Next page.
And let's, next page. Yep. Now this one is kind of interesting because when this is an old Mongol bow. Usually nowadays when we say Mongol bow, we usually imagine a different type of bow of later period of Manchu type, so-called Manchu type. But
Yes.
this was the bow of the Genghis Khan period, the old
Right.
Mongol bow. As you can see, it had heavier limbs, and heavier CS, and very wide and flat limbs. That's
Yes.
its distinctive feature. It's also not contact, meaning that the string doesn't touch the bend, this elbow bend sort of. And yep, and if you can flip, we can see the artistic representation of the archer of that period, of the so-called Mongol.
Yeah.
Yep. He's also riding stirrups. He has this quiver where arrows are facing with arrow tips up, facing up, not down.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's how we see it on all of the depictions of the period. And he's using that Mongol style, old Mongol style bow. He's riding a small Mongol horse.
Yeah.
So
and of course he's using the thumb release here as well, which was their preferred type. Yeah.
Yep. Of course.
Okay.
And now if we can go forward a little bit.
Yeah.
So now we're talking about the Kazakh Khanate itself. These are my direct ancestors now. We're talking starting from 15th century, when the name actually appeared. It doesn't mean that we didn't exist before. It just means that the name Kazakh, this is when it all started, 15th century. And practically pretty much the same territory as modern Kazakhstan. And
what does it mean? What does it mean? Khanate mean area or something, or no?
No. It's a form of government, because we had Hans like Genghis Khan.
Yes, Han.
So it's kind of like kingdom. Kingdom is a system with kings, right? Ruling system with kings. Yep. Sultanate would be where Sultan rules, and Khanate is where Han rules. Also, there is a Khaganate. Don't confuse. There is a Khaganate too, and Khaganate, Khagan usually is the one who rules a few Khanates, so to speak. Yeah. So it's even higher.
Do you correct me if I'm wrong. The modern word Han, from Hungarian Hanish, would it originally come from this Khanate maybe, or not?
No, probably not, because
I thought maybe there's some connection there, and it's just the pronunciation over time. It kind of watered down a little bit. They don't have such a strong kha sound, in the Hanish language. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but just guessing here.
Yeah, I understand. It's a very logical, assumption. But we have to take in consideration that original name of the Hans was different. Han is a European pronunciation of the name. For example, in our sources, we usually use the name Sunnu for Hans. Because that's how it got reconstructed from Chinese sources, as I believe. So from Sunnu, it got transformed to Han. And I'm not sure if there is a direct link, but who knows? I'm not an expert in linguistics.
Okay.
So.
All right, no problem.
Anyways,
okay. Continue.
Sure. Also note the geographical situation. We have Russia on the north, on this map. We have Siberian, uh,
Yeah.
Siberian Khanates. We have Mongols and Oirats. We have Uzbeks, and we have Nogais and Kalmyks and Bashkirs on the west.
So
And there is
you're
a
really
Caspian Sea.
you are really surrounded by 4, 5, 6 different types of people, civilizations. So it's like a melting pot.
Right. Exactly. Now we are also bordering with China too. So
Right, of course, yeah, that's another one. Yes.
And let's not forget that. Yep. Now let's not forget that Kazakhstan is the 9th largest country in the world.
Wow.
So it's one
amazing.
of it's in 10 largest countries in the world. Yeah, along with very big countries like Russia, China, United States, Canada, Brazil, and etc. So it's a huge country. And can you imagine that our ancestors were able to hold this country for centuries? And if we flip the page once again, this is the artistic reconstruction representation of an early Kazakh horseback archer, or just generally warrior, because you know, in our tradition we always say that they didn't strictly subdivide in these military classes. They had to be universal soldiers. They could do everything, and the only difference was how much equipment you own at this moment. So if you were lightly armored and only had a bow and arrows, you would be a horseback archer. But if you had some armor on you and you know, some heavier weapons, then they would put you in this shock cavalry or something. So training at the same time was universal. We had this system called the 5 weapons, and it stands for bow and arrow, lance or spear, saber, battle axe, and the dagger. Sometimes they include blunt weapons in this 5 weapon system. So every boy and even a girl had to learn it for self-protection, and then it came handy when they had to protect their land or when they went for raids. So this one is an early 15th, 16th century Kazakh archer. And if you flip the page again.
Before we move, I just want to ask about the knot in the horse's tail. What does that represent? Was that something they used to do?
Not only they used to do it, but they still do it. And I think it has, I think it has both practical and aesthetical reasons, because when it's tied like this neatly, it doesn't get in the way. Sometimes in earlier times they even put a leather encasing over it, highly decorated.
Right.
But in later times they would usually just tie it, and I've seen the guys still do it nowadays. And it's when I asked them why you do it, because I was curious, because I know these guys didn't see these old manuscripts.
Of course.
Why do you still do it in the 21st century? And they said, because it looks nicer this way. So it's kind of an aesthetical thing.
Right. I don't know if I read it somewhere or saw it somewhere, but I was wondering if it had something to do with when they're going into war. They tie the tail of the horse as a way to show that, you know, they are donning their armor and their weapons, and you know they're not going to come back. They're going to commit themselves fully to the enemy, and you know they may go, and even the horse is committed as well. But I'm not sure how much truth there is to that, because you know sometimes in the West people like to you know plait the horse's hair, the tail, because it looks nice. So I'm sure there's definitely an aesthetic visual reason for that, but I'm wondering if there's something a little bit more martial, a bit deeper to that. I don't know.
Well, I never heard such a theory, so I'm not gonna speculate.
Mm.
In our culture, fleeing from the battlefield was never considered a bad thing. In
Ah.
other words, while we had a knightly tradition, there was a matter of honor, but dying on the battlefield
Mm.
without a good reason was not considered a big honor.
Right, I
So
see. Really?
uh,
Okay. Interesting.
yeah, no, the mentality was very tactical.
Mm.
They had to think to my alive than dead. You
Mm.
see what I mean?
Sure. No, no, I understand. Obviously,
So
it makes sense. It makes sense. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, there is a joke even. I'll try to translate it. It goes something like this: it doesn't matter if we charge forward or if we run away, because in either case we will be running. We will be moving.
I see. Yeah.
And yeah, and because they could always shoot back,
Yes.
so it didn't really matter in which direction they were moving because
Mm.
they were still shooting at the enemy, whether they
Mm.
were fleeing or whether they were charging.
Mm.
So that would be my guess. That would be my
Sure.
guess.
Sure. Okay. Next slide.
Yep. So this is a slightly later development of the same
Mm.
kind of principle. This is 17th century now,
Yeah.
and the archer represented here. If you can, if you can see, he's wearing armor and weapons very similar to Turkish, Ottoman, or Iranian, because
Mm.
that was the fashion, military fashion of this entire region. Uh, and he's holding a shorter version of a bow.
Mm.
And one detail I want to kind of focus your attention is that he has a musket on his back
Yes, I can see it
now.
on his
His
back.
arm,
Yes. Yes.
yeah, he has a musket now, and this reflects this phenomena when the gunpowder weapons got introduced in Kazakhstan and
Mm.
Central Asia.
Mm.
They did not in any way replace horsebow.
Yeah.
They complemented it. In other words, they adopted it. They started using
Mm.
it, but only as a sort of specialty weapon in addition to
Right.
horsebow.
Yes. Yes. Interesting.
Because yeah, because uh, no gunpowder weapon of that period could match horsebow in speed
Of course.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and you cannot shoot it on the horseback while
Mm.
moving, and you can only shoot it once before you have to reload it. But
Mm.
it would come handy in certain conditions.
Yes.
So for about 2 or even 3 centuries, they used to have both.
Mm.
They didn't want to abandon the weapon of their ancestors, but at the same
Mm.
time, they wanted to embrace the progress and the new weapons, the new technology. So they just
Mm.
carried both, and they were very proficient with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Excellent. Very
this
interesting.
is an interesting one. Yep.
Very interesting. Yeah. Definitely showing the again the evolution of how the evolution of weapons and adopting new weapons. Yeah.
Yep. So
Okay. Next
let's
one.
go to the next one. Yep.
Wow. What is this
So
thing?
this is
Okay.
yeah, 18th, 19th century now. So this archer now,
Mm. Danyar, you can hear me? Okay,
You'll
so
be
we
able
just had a
to edit it, right?
yeah, no problem. We had a slight technical issue there. Okay, so we were continuing on this page, yeah?
Yep. Yep. Let me start over just in case.
Sure, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so this one is now 18th, 19th century Kazakh archer. And there are a few major differences here, as you can see. First of all, he's no longer wearing an armor because at that point, armor was going out of fashion everywhere. And in our region, it was because we kind of, the nomadic civilization was in decline. So we were getting poorer, and yeah, if you compare with the previous one, so we were getting poorer, and we were losing access to trade, so we had to adjust and compensate, and for that reason we lost armor. The weapons became plainer and simpler. We didn't import as much. We learned to produce simpler but more still very effective weapons. It
Yeah.
affected the entire complex. And also you can see that he's now shooting a different type of bow. Yeah, it's a larger bow. It came from China, from the Manchu people, and this is something we'll be talking about later in the next chapter. And so this is kind of the latest evolution. This is where it all ended. He's still wearing, he's still carrying a musket with him.
Yes. Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
He can still, get into close quarter combat, into melee fight. He has all kind of weapons. He's just as efficient, but less armored. And speaking of this type of bow, if we go back to the next one. No, forward.
Sorry, forward.
We can
Okay.
go forward.
This one?
Yeah. For example, you can see in this image, it's a painting of a Russian geographer. He's very famous, Vasily Vereshchagin. And he painted this Bukhara archer, which is modern Uzbekistan. And he's holding the same kind of large type of bow.
Yes.
Today we refer to it as Manchu bow, Manchu type bow, but it was also very, very common in Central Asia. So, and I'll complain a little bit about it later. So if you can go to the next image.
Sure.
Again, same artist showing two gate guards at the Tamerlan gates, and again they're using the same large type of bow, these very large arrows.
Yes.
So I just wanted to, I always try to, whenever I make a statement, I always try to support it with some evidence, and this is a period painting showing how we use this type of bow in Central Asia, because if a Chinese or Manchu person would see this kind of bow, he would say, no, this is not historically accurate. This is our type of bow. He's just, but we had them. This is a fact.
Yes.
It's a historical fact.
No, definitely. I think one thing that I'm noticing is that when we're looking through different peoples and civilizations and things like that, especially where there's a mixture, there is no one fixed type of style, of uniform, or of weaponry. There was sometimes a mixture, and different people would adopt, a bow from this type of peoples, or armor from this type of people, or a horse from this type of people. So there's quite a mix. It's not like a fixed recognized uniform. One is different from the next. There's like an amalgamation.
Well, just like today, I mean, how many countries are using M16 and how many countries
Right.
using AK-47.
Right.
You know,
Right. Exactly.
so
Yeah.
same idea, and it's produced in so many countries now. So
Yes.
anyways,
Indeed.
if we can go to the next one. So these are also period images showing Kazakhs of that time. One is actually a photograph. It's taken in the end of 19th or beginning of 20th century, also showing a Kazakh. He is not a warrior, but he's wearing a warrior's armor, and he's holding his weapons. And you can
Yeah.
see the so-called Manchu type of bow on his back. So again,
For sure.
another evidence
Yes.
that our ancestors were using this type of bow.
Mm.
And the one on the bottom is also a drawing showing a warrior very similar that I illustrated on the previous one, the 18th, 19th century Kazakh archer.
Yeah.
So you can see his this is a period drawing showing quiver full of arrows and a musket or some sort of
Indeed.
gunpowder weapon
Yeah.
on his back.
In his right hand, this is a whip for the horse or something else?
Yeah. Okay. It's a whip. Yep.
Okay.
But
All right.
by the way, this is a so-called combat whip because it has this weight at the end, so it could be used as a blunt weapon.
Right.
As well.
Multi-use. Okay. Next one. All right.
Yep. So these are just some of my bows from my collection, and the one on the top, obviously you can probably recognize it. It's a Turkish Ottoman
For
bow.
sure. Yeah. Yeah.
The one in the middle, the one in the middle is Korean, and the one on the bottom is modern day Mongol, which is the Manchu type bow, so-called, which is exactly like those that we just saw on those Bukhara paintings, Central Asian paintings. So, yep. Except for Korean, I only showed it here just to show the relationship. But Turkish bow and Mongol bow, they were very close to the bows that we were using.
Yeah. Definitely.
In Kazakhstan, and if more about it, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Danyar, maybe a couple of more minutes. We're going to wrap up this part one.
Okay.
And then we can start again in part two. So we'll just do one or two more slides, maybe. Okay.
No. Let's stop here, and this will be the next section.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. So we went through all the different personalities, the different miniatures, the images of the archers, the uniforms they wore, the weaponry they had, and definitely the evolution of their weaponry, which was very interesting. The next section, we will be talking about the different types of bows, presumably, or what else were you going to talk about?
Yeah. I'm going to develop my thought about the two types of bows that Kazakhs were using in more recent times that we have evidence of.
Excellent. So what I would like people to do, if you're watching this video, I mean, speaking for myself, I've personally been really impressed with Daniyar's level of research, the images, the detail of his painting, his drawing, also his skill in drawing as well. He's really put a lot of effort into this book. So on each of the videos that we do, I will below put the link for the book, the link for the calendar, and the link to Danyar's YouTube page. So I really want everyone to go there, subscribe to his page. He's got a lot of great videos, which are in a sequence that he's talking about his experience and his background, also the book as well. So I really want everyone to go and check that out as well. So Danyar, thank you for this. I can't wait for the next section. I'm going to try to read a bit further on in the book as well, so that I can come up with some more questions. But you know, what you've explained already has been very comprehensive and very interesting. So thank you very much for that. Anything just to say before we sign off?
No, I mean, let's just continue, because I just want to go. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I'm sorry that we have to cut it, but just from experience, if we do it, you know, in smaller chunks, it's easier for people to try and get the full benefit.
That's perfect.
Excellent.
That's perfect.
Okay, fine.
That works for me.
Fine. Okay, Danyar, thank you so much. We will speak to you soon. Hopefully, we'll organize the next part 2, and we'll continue from there.
Okay. So
Awesome.
when is it going to be roughly, in terms of